Back again, part two.
Well, it's got to be, can't be too much different.
You're familiar with all the pictures of the alleged victim, airport.
I've been, yeah, I've
Who do you
seen.
propose that they are saying that represents? And I'm sure, others have, does that person exist because of his life? I mean, we, perceive that quite frequently, if someone is out targeting victims, there may be representative, and there's truth to that because we've seen it. A number of people apparently in a situation in which, you've been suspected, think that trend is there. Does that person actually exist? Does that make sense to you at all? I mean, was there a dominant person in your life that they are basically prescribing as having represented these alleged victims?
Well, let me approach that question.
I'm not trying to ask you.
No, I hear you. No, let me approach this question this way. To begin with.
I mean, I've never seen Linda Valiant, so I don't know if they're saying that it's one of them or somebody whomever.
Again, that's pop psychology, I think.
Yeah,
They're trying, people are fishing around, they want a hook, they want a smoking gun, they want cause and effect, and it's not gonna be there. It's not gonna be there. I think all you have to do is go back to the late 60s, early 70s, and if you could recreate somehow the styles of the times, I wouldn't be surprised if you found out that young women between the ages of 16 and 26, 99 out of 100 had long hair with a hair part.
Some of the 12-year-olds did it, sisters did.
Yeah. That was the prevalent style of the time. So I don't think that is indicative of anything in particular. And another, talking about photographs, another one of the myths that I'm just appalled by in a way. It doesn't bother me. I'm appalled.
There's a difference between appalled and not bothered.
I mean, appalled that people are so, I just think so desperate to find something that makes sense to them. But they always have, many of the articles in the books include a series of photographs of me. A half a dozen photographs. Many faces of Ted Bundy, the great disguise artist. And they have all these photographs, and they're all different. They do, they're all different, I agree. But they were taken over 10-year span of time. They have my graduation photograph in 65, they have my arrest photograph in 75. They're all taken at different. Even, look at you, either one of you, if you would grow a beard, innocently grow a beard, and over the course of just a couple months, photographs when you are in different dress and different moods, different times of day, different expressions, you're going to look very, very different. And you're not trying to look different. But this is the myth they created, that I was a master of disguise. In fact, this is one of, sometimes we kid around in the back, and one of the guys got to call me the master of disguise. That was my nickname.
The title for a book, I guess, right? But nobody's picked up on that one yet.
But I think that because people believe that when if somebody sneaks around or goes around doing these things, they just assume that they disguise themselves. And really, in some way, what they don't understand is that you don't have to, and no one has to disguise themselves, really, because people's minds. Eyewitness. You know anything about eyewitness identification?
Oh, absolutely.
It is the worst form of evidence in court. It is also the worst form of information in my opinion, that a police officer can get, because it can be so misleading. And I've seen it happen over the years. But I know that I could walk up to somebody under ordinary circumstances and they won't remember me a day or 5 days, a month later. I mean, under ordinary circumstances. I also know that when I escaped in Aspen, I was seen, and I never left that area.
Okay.
I mean, I was escaped in Aspen, if I went up in the mountains, and I wasn't equipped mentally or physically to handle, being up at 10,000 feet, even in the summertime, not knowing how to live off the land. It kind of wore me down. Nevertheless, I was just outside of Aspen in the mountains, and I was being seen at truck stops in Wyoming, in Seattle, in San Francisco, in Australia. Okay, and if I'd been in Australia, they would swear that well, see, that eyewitness who saw him was right. And I've seen it happen over and over
Australia.
again. So I'm saying, yeah, I know that I've seen people, who just never remember. Seeing me. And I didn't have to hide. And I didn't have to disguise myself. I just had to just be unobtrusive.
And yet, when you were arrested, you weren't recognized by police officers.
Even talking about here in Florida?
Yes.
Oh, sure, yeah, no, I wasn't, I had to tell them I was in their custody for 2 or 3 days. And I was
saying is,
And I was on the 10 most wanted list at the time. And I had to tell them, they didn't believe who I was. I mean, when I told them.
when you were a fugitive and you became aware that you were on the 10 most wanted list, did that have any bearing on the way you went after to behave? No big deal one way or the other.
Why?
Matter of survival, at points, continuous survival.
My opinion is, I'll be quite frank with you, that I'm not trying to be negative, or what would be the word, or insult your intelligence or anything, but I don't think you all catch anybody, really. I think, and there are exceptions, okay, sure. But I think generally guys learn to catch themselves.
Do you think sometimes they want to be found?
I don't know.
But don't want to give up? Is that the difference?
I never wanted to get caught, I can tell you that, with no doubt in my mind. I mean, that's a pop theory, no one was pop psychological theory, so I never wanted to get caught. I was never worried about FBI posters, because my knowledge of how the human mind works told me that, unless I just stood there in the post office next to it, ringing stupidly, I never feared being identified based upon a photograph, because I know that photographs versus reality distort. And if you just act normal, people are not going to say. If you act weird, then they're going to say, I wonder what's wrong with me. And you're going to stand out. But being on the run, I wasn't worried about it.
That's Ted Bundy, there aren't a whole lot of Ted Bundys out there that aren't wanted posters. In other words, other individuals that do see them will act differently, and they will,
Well, you have to take, I would certainly, if someone on a fugitive, such as I was, I was aware of, believe me, I wasn't oblivious to my status and the fact that I had to be concerned. But
if you were guilty and charged, we would consider you an organized person. Same as if I were doing those things based upon my abilities, intelligence, and knowledge and whatnot. I would be doing things in an organized way. I wouldn't be real concerned about the posters either, because I feel the same way about people as you do. However, Joe Blow, this organized guy, he's going to panic. He's the guy that's going to wear the bandage on his eye, the guy that's going to grow a beard and dye his hair, things like that. So, statistically, I'm not trying to justify the way we do things, but obviously I think you can see statistically that it does help in many situations.
Well, it's something you can't avoid.
Your particular situation.
You can't avoid doing it. You can't ignore doing it, because, you would seem to be negligent in your duties if you didn't put these posters out, because that's what's expected of people who are looking for fugitives. But realistically, there are people who are going to see, who think that everybody goes around looking for people in FBI posters, whereas it's just simply absurd, and that just doesn't happen.
Well, to me, it's a stressor. The more stress you put on the guy,
Yeah.
the more chances the guy's gonna make a mistake or do something stupid. And it's a stressor to a lot of people to see the wrong picture. Nobody else that movie would recognize him. He knows that's him, and therefore he assumes they see him the same way.
And you're right, that's exactly what happens. And if you fall into that trap, you create your own stress. And the more paranoid you become, the more likely it is you get caught, because you start acting differently. But if you realize that person on that picture is not me, okay, you say, that's not me, that guy, my name's this, and I'm acting okay. And people are only going to think that I'm the person on that poster if I start acting in ways that make them think that I should be on that poster, you know?
Well, sure, they need to, so private attorney.
Whatever your preference is, if you want to kind of.
It's our general opinion that you will be back in, well, our community will be back in the general population for too much longer. We would like maybe to pursue this further with you sometime, but when this extra stress gets out of your life and all these problems are diminished, so, is that a fair statement?
The personal property found beside the road, I said, well, did you make a habit of, when you found a victim, going up and down the roadways, in various access roads and highways to and from where the victim was found? And their answer to me was they didn't. They just happened to find this inadvertently. Now, I don't know if they're being straight with me or not, but my response was, well, what would you do if you just dumped the body of a person somewhere and you had a car full of stuff? Well, you start throwing it out the windows. Okay, I mean, think about it. And maybe the reason that you found it there is because he was just driving down the highway. And if you went, and I said in the future, when next time you find a body, for several miles on either end, take all the major routes out of there and just scour the roadsides. So I don't know if it's a standard procedure, but that was my suggestion. And because my feeling was that in all likelihood he just threw it out the window, and that would give him an idea where he was going. You know, a general idea of the route he chose.
Do you think when this guy is with the victims, how does he regard them? I mean, does he think of them as an identity? Does he depersonalizing them? Do you think he's picking hookers because he knows they're usually fairly verbal type of folks, and he wants to hear something come out of their mouths, whether it be a scream or a threat or a cry or whatever? Do you think that has any bearing in selection, or do you think it's because they're easy and they're there? Or do you think, as most people do in this investigation, somewhere prostitution played a dark shadow in his life, whether it be with a relative or a bad experience he's had? You know, at the beginning there was the consideration, and it was there's a biblical connotation here, you know, ridding the world of prostitutes, and maybe the first one's going into the river for baptismal purpose or cleansing them of their crime, you know.
Yeah, I hear you.
I have some problems with that, but I can understand it. Okay.
Okay. Again, I don't know, and I don't mean, I'm not,
Yet again, I had the damn thing on mute. He's giving prostitutes they're just easier victims. And one thing that's a overlying theme in these tapes is that they're overthinking it. They're just overthinking it.
say this, I don't know what's going through the guy's mind exactly. And the only way anybody's going to know is to ask him. And I'm not trying to frustrate you on this. These are very good questions, and these are the kinds of things that have to go through anyone's mind who's looking at the case and trying to solve it. But the question as to what he does with a victim, I mean, I haven't seen, and don't need to see for that matter, the autopsy reports or, you know, the thing about the crime scene. I mean, what the crime scenes look like or the status of any evidence they found. So I don't know how long, it would be important to me to know how long they were alive, if they can tell. And all they have is skeletal remains, so you really don't know. But it would be critical. I think there are a couple of the early victims, they might be able to do something. One of the, contrary to the information in the public domain, one of the victims was not in the water, as you know, one of the four, and that's significant. I think that's terribly significant.
How do you perceive that significance? I mean, just your gut feeling? My
gut feeling was that at the same time he was pulling her down the hillside toward the river, the cops were scouring an area just a short distance away where they just found the body that same day. And I think all of a sudden he snapped to what was happening, or somebody surprised him, and he took off like hell because he just left her there, and that was
that close.
he came that close.
Yeah.
That was, and I'll bet you I'd have to get out I have one of these things. It's the police lists that show when people disappear, but I'll bet you he went home and he said, Jesus Christ, I was that close, and his heart was probably going 1,000 beats a minute, and he may have taken stock in himself. And you noticed at that point he went from the river somewhere else. I think if there was any chance, I mean, too many years have passed, but it could have been a car just driving along the road, or it could have been the flashlights of investigators going on the crime scene. It could have been any number of things, but it looks to me like panic and surprise.
Yeah. And he learned.
And you learn. This guy's a learner. Some guys aren't learners. Some guys are just so disorganized they're not learners. They're just going to bumble along till they get caught.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy's a learner. Or was. A learner.
Do you perceive him as totally organized?
No.
That's the damn mic off again.
I mean,
He's talking about organized and disorganized serial killers. So it doesn't mean that his life, the guy's life was disorganized. It just means how they approached the crime. Did they do it a certain way, or was it haphazardly done and just in the heat of the moment and just dumped? Or did they actually go through a methodical plan? And does it repeat?
It's a useful model that you have there, but it's, subject to, some modifications. Or, in my opinion, that you can have a hybrid. I mean, that you don't have a totally disorganized or a totally organized. You have guys who are more or less organized and more or less disorganized, who might progress from an organized mode to a disorganized mode, or vice versa.
Rarely.
Or, okay,
Right.
I hear you.
Although he may have to an extent, although we would expect him to be more organized than disorganized.
Exactly.
Simply because it wasn't an attack. I mean, basically, he's confronting these people and engaging in conversation, basically winning them into his confidence, which says something about his social skills, apparently. Okay, even though a prostitute's not that difficult person to get into your car, nonetheless, he obviously has enough confidence in himself to speak to these young ladies and to spend a little time with them while they're still alive. He's got a vehicle. He's leaving the premises, but he's adjusting, and that's the important thing, which means he's intellectualizing, not basically acting totally out of instinct. He's thinking, and he's probably following the media, and he's done a lot of things we would expect him to do. So I would think that he tends to fall on the more organized.
Oh, certainly, no question.
Becoming more organized.
Becoming more organized.
And to me, the ultimate organization is to know when to quit.
And no one quit. Sure.
That's right. And we don't know how many of those people have ever reached that point. We just don't know.
Or know how to control
That's right.
that urge to the point where he could still be, this guy could still be just indulging his passions just a couple times a year. And, prostitutes are still very mobile. They still disappear. I imagine that most of the hookers on the streets in the Puget Sound area now weren't on the streets several years ago. So,
The whole new generation, so to speak.
yeah. He could still be doing it, but you just don't know. You just don't know if he's still alive or where he is. I think that, but just for sanity's sake, the investigators have to assume that they're going to solve the case, and he's out there somewhere, that he isn't buried 6 feet under somewhere.
Yeah.
In which case, everybody has got to throw up their hands and say, "Why me?"
I'm sure, I don't know, touched on this, if he would be as direct with you as I'm going to be. And, when you come into these interviews like this, and someone is kind enough to give us your time like you are, and I realize you've got a lot of pressing matters, obviously. But there was obviously other homicides up there, similar years prior, which, you've been close suspected of them. You perceive this guy as following the role of someone else? Or do you think that this is just totally a,
Now we're getting into his potential murders. So they've flip flopped. They've gotten him in this far. He's sucked in, and I think he's probably going to give it to him. I'm not sure if it was in these tapes. I want to say the confession tapes was like in it was 86. I think it was like 88, 89. Right before his sentence was executed. So
an adjustment because of this one coming up out of the water? You know what I'm getting at? Same part of the country, very similar type of homicides. Did you, and I know you've had to think about that because
Do you think he's actually sitting down reading about other crime series and then trying to pattern himself or otherwise learn?
I believe his needs or his drives are certainly from within. I mean, he doesn't have to get that from anybody.
Right.
But the technique, we use the word MO because I don't know that much about all the crime scenes. Be that strong. Do you think that that had anything to do with it?
Well,
I mean,
I'm sure
we've got two major ones in the country in the last 10 years. They're both up there. Now, in truth, we had the one one ongoing in Los Angeles right now where 11 or 12 prostitutes have been killed, possibly by the same person. There's one in Oakland, California, where there are 8 or 9 who've been murdered. Some of them may have been, I feel strongly, by the same person. We had a situation, as the media termed the Night Stalker investigation down in Los Angeles that I worked on for a couple of weeks out there. We've had other serial ones, but not with the dumping of the bodies per se, not the approach of the victims. The Night Stalker would go into houses at night. People were asleep. These other ones I mentioned to you in Oakland and Los Angeles are basically block hookers who are being propositioned that they're never seen again. Whereas up in the Northwest, now you've got 2 up there now, 2 series, that's what we would call them. Very similar. In the earlier case, we have no reason to believe that the women at all had anything to do with prostitution. The obvious physical resemblances that media played up, physical trafficking, but nonetheless, still that part of the country, that type of apparently very organized individual. And I'm just wondering if, I'm sure you have a lot of felt because you lived out that way, plus you've certainly had contact with investigators about this book.
There's one more that you didn't mention, a budding series that I see in evidence down in the Tampa area. I don't know if you've been alerted to that.
Are these the ones with the girls who are being dumped in cemeteries?
Cemeteries, yeah. Half a dozen of them.
We've had some general inquiries, but I don't know that we're actually working on it yet unless it's happened this last week.
I don't know what's going on.
I think they're talking about Bobby Joe Long. It was just executed a couple of years ago. I'm thinking that's who they're referring to. I don't think it's Gainesville Ripper guy. I can't remember his name, but the only one I know in Tampa would be Bobby Joe Long.
No idea there. I think that there are. It's certainly got to plague the law enforcement people up there wondering if there's something about the Pacific Northwest that encourages that kind of crime. But it's not just 2. There are, if you've looked at the list of unsolved homicides that could be of a serial type, there are dozens of unsolved homicides in the Pacific Northwest over the past 10 years. Unsolved, not even linked to a particular series.
Right.
And it's clear somebody's doing it. Okay, somebody's doing it. Okay, and I said, you don't just have the Green River Killer up there. You've probably got 5 to 10 other guys doing their thing up there in one way or another. This is a scary thing. There could be a couple Lake and Ames up in the foothills. And nobody in Northern California, there was no big stink about a serial murder pattern down in Northern California. Nobody was aware of any group of disappearances that were suspiciously related, and yet you had this ongoing thing. But it was like, if a tree falls down in the woods, does it make sound, kind of thing. Well, if the person disappears and there's no body, is there a murder? Okay, that's the same kind of thing going on. And so, sure, you've got these two, but the Pacific Northwest has a lot more too. And I do think there's something, I don't know, I mean, unlike you, I don't have access to all the data to know, where the various serial murders that have serial murder patterns that have been identified have occurred. But I do think the Pacific Northwest has more than its share. Okay.
Probably does.
For what? I mean, look at not just Seattle, Portland, but look north of the border. Look at Vancouver. They've had a couple up there over the years.
We've got several of them to look at. And you're right, they have considered the links there. Really have.
The date is February 13th, 1986. This is Bill Hagmeyer along with Special Agent, the Jacksonville Division. The interview is being held at the Florida State Prison in Rayford, Florida. And the interviewee is Theodore H. Bundy.
They could. Jeez. These are two different guys. I don't know. This guy's a moron. He couldn't even get the middle name right. Jesus Christ. H? It's no H. I mean, yeah. Anyway, since they're having a tape transition, I'm going to stop there. Please like, subscribe, share it, make comments. Please let me know, and we'll see y'all the next time. All right. Have a good day. Bye.